Hello YouTube, welcome back to another overview of Sega Saturn Magazine, the UK edition. This is issue 6, April 96, and if you're wondering where issue 5 is, I've got a complete collection bar issue 5, which is an itch I need to scratch really, but yeah, it's just one of those things I've never got round to. And some of the earlier issues of this magazine are quite difficult to obtain, and they don't appear very often on eBay, so when they do, they sometimes can go for about 40 to 50 pounds, unfortunately. So yeah, we'll crack on with this one. So this is, like I said, issue 6, April 1996. So on the cover you've got some, anime inspired kind of King of Fighters art. The various characters on there. King of Fighters 95, Gun Griffin, Wipeout, Mortal Kombat 3. So the first thing that they say is, how does it compare to the PlayStation version? Already kind of set themselves up for a direct comparison, rather than rather than reviewing the game on its own merits. As was always the case in the 90s, anyone of a certain age will remember, gaming magazines always come with adverts for spots. Clearly there was a demographic there. So, Go Speed Racer. Oh, that's Wipeout. So yeah. So the contents, it's not the indexes. So first look at Last Bronx there, page 16, which was a very, very late release on the Saturn, and a fantastic conversion. So previews, Dark Savior loaded, Wipeout, Street Fighter Alpha, Gex, Shining Wisdom, you got Magic Carpet there, more King of Fighters 95. Virtua Fighter 3 at last. So this must be the first announcement of Virtua Fighter 3. So, yeah. It says the new character that Yu Suzuki and co have enticed the Japanese public has finally been unveiled. Nothing regarding a Saturn version. I mean, it's still pretty early. I mean, Model 3 was, quite advanced, wasn't it, compared to the old chunky Saturn. Don't blame us, blame them. You wouldn't believe the amount of phone calls we've receiving, harping on about RF cables or lack of them, PAL conversions, prices of games, just about everything that has been done to do with Sega. But after half the time, you're just as confused as you are. However, help is at hand with the all-new Sega Custom Service line, created specifically to deal with your game and Saturn inquiries. The number is 0181 996 4620. So that's London. It's now 0207. So I'm sure that's probably a deadline. If you have more specific inquiry, not game related, you can email Sega directly or at segasaturn@soehq.sega.co.uk. You can't guarantee a personal reply for everyone, but all your queries and suggestions will be read. So again, I can't imagine that email is probably still live, but it'd be cool if it was. Panzer Dragoon 2. Pursuing through the content, you'll no doubt our Panzer Dragoon Zwei showcase. This version was incomplete, back in most of episode 5. So yeah, just an update. Funny how they've used Sonic CD kind of art then. At that time, Sonic CD had been out for what, 3 or 4 years? Lordy, it's Geo Blockers. It's Japanese. Gunstar Heroes for Saturn. God, that would have been something, wouldn't it? Getting Treasure to do that on the Sega Saturn wasn't to be. Rumour emerging on the internet suggesting that the Halcyon programmers Treasure are hard at work on the next Saturn title. There's no word from them themselves or what the new title would contain, but it's thought that Gunstar Heroes follow-up with a complete new game engine, new graphics are on the cards. We wouldn't be complaining if this was true. More when we get to the bottom of the story. Yeah, so an absolute sterling game on the Mega Drive. Gunstar Heroes. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. The way that runs. Fighting Vipers. Virtua Cop cheap. Advert for the Royal Navy. So the HMV chart for the Saturn was F1 Challenge. That was a top-selling game. Sega Saturn Magazine charts. Sega Rally Virtua Fighter 2 and Wipeout. So, it's interesting. So a PlayStation advert in the Sega Saturn Magazine. So really sticking it to them then. So Total NBA 96. In your face. So really sticking it to the Saturn owners. From what I know, I don't think the Saturn really had a serious NBA game until much later on its life. 3D Lemmings in development. Discworld. Skeleton Warriors. Overkill. Space Hulk. I always remember these screenshots, and they look really cool. They're all kind of CG. Pre-rendered things, but still they look awesome, and you can definitely tell they're kind of making the most of it. Don't know anything about Space Hulk. I think it's part of the Warhammer. I think, possibly. Need for Speed. Really good kind of. It's a good game. I would say it's a good game. I do have it myself, and it's. Hasn't really got anything to do with the kind of games that followed it. I would say it's very much its own sort of thing, like a point-to-point racer rather than a track racer. Overkill. I don't think that come out on Saturn. So Konami seems to have had a change of heart. In addition to agreeing to publish one more title on the Mega Drive, they've agreed to publish on the Saturn 2. Luckily, unlike the last game, Proteus, it will be a complete new project for the company, although it appears on the PlayStation first. So I mean, Konami were pretty lackluster on the Saturn. They, considering how successful it was in Japan, definitely the PlayStation was their focus. And tell me if I'm wrong, I can't think of a single game they published on the N64. Yeah, no, they did. They did Track and Field, didn't they? But there was no kind of really big titles on the N64. I mean, to be honest, there was no massive Konami titles on the Saturn, really. Impact Racing. So AM3 unveil a new arcade title, Last Bronx. Sonic game update, so again Sonic Fighters. So Last Bronx, really cool game. Really, really cool game. It's like a kind of modern Soul Calibur or Soul Blade inspired kind of Japanese fighter. All weapon based. Very, very Virtua Fighter, but much more kind of quicker, I find. I don't say it's easier to pick up than Virtua Fighter, but it's a really good game in its own right. And again, I've said it from kind of a long time that I think this is the best looking 3D fighter of that generation. It really does sing on the Saturn. So Virtua Fighter Kids, again, that did come out on Saturn. Not a great game, and as daft as it sounds, it's just limited by their tiny little arm. You can't connect. And if you play it, you'll understand. So you've got Athlete Kings, Virtua Cop 2. So again, these must be the very first screenshots of Virtua Cop 2. No, it doesn't. That's not Virtua Cop 2. That's like LA Machine Gun. Gunblade New York. That's it. Yeah. That didn't come out on Saturn, but it was a part of released on the Wii. Alone in the Dark. Yeah, so this was, kind of set off the whole survival horror genre, and was quickly overtaken by Resident Evil. Dark Savior. This is a kind of funny game on the Saturn. It's a strategy role-playing game, but rather than battling your enemies like in turn-based, it becomes more like a 2D fighter. So it's kind of unique, and it's all played it in like an isometric, kind of like Marble Madness kind of view. So it does have some funky kind of visual aspects, but yeah, you can kind of rotate the screen as well. I remember that. So again, don't think it's cheap now. I mean, like any kind of role-playing game, isn't it? There, you know, any of these kind of games are silly prices. Loaded. I did play this back in the day, and I also played the PlayStation version. And again, this was one of these games which really chugged on Saturn. The frame rate, especially, was, you know, really it did drop quite significantly. I think back in the day we didn't necessarily know about frame rate, but it just you pick up on the stutter, and you pick up on the lack of smoothness. And the sequel Reloaded didn't come out on the Saturn. Those, ironically, there is actually a playable demo that came out of Reloaded with Saturn Power, which was one of the rival unofficial magazines. Yeah, some more letters. So again, usual things. How does this game compare to PlayStation? When's Sonic coming out? And what does the future hold? Q&A. So again, these were very much just, oh, when's this game coming out? When's that game coming out? What your opinion on it? When were these coin-ops? So again, we used to call arcades coin-ops, didn't we? I don't know why. When will these arcades or coin-ops appear in the arcades? Manx TT, not Virtua, Fighting Vipers, Indy 500 and Virtua Cop 2. Will any of these appear on Saturn? Do you think the arcade racer and the Virtua Stick give better gameplay than the ordinary joypads? Any used in Virtua Fighter 3? Virtua Fighter 3 number 4 will come out later this year. That's optimistic. Optimistic. So, King of Fighters 95. Again, I'm not going to proclaim to be the most knowledgeable gamer when it comes to SNK's, fighting series. But I do know that this was a PAL release, strangely, and it did come released with the 4 megabyte card as well. Not the 4 megabyte, it was actually a ROM card, wasn't it? Because it held the animation data on it. So you can't play it without that. And it's the only cartridge that's compatible with it. But yeah, it comes in a really nice kind of cardboard slipcase with the game and the cartridge nestled in it. And yeah, again, not cheap. In terms of how this compares to the Neo Geo, I couldn't really say. I mean, what I would say is back in the day, when the Neo Geo was seen as the absolute opulence of games consoles, and you were getting these conversions, almost like for like on the next generation of systems, the step up was pretty mind-blowing, really. And again, we didn't necessarily see, because we were never used to the Neo Geo, we were only used to screenshots. We weren't kind of privy to lost frames of animation, and maybe certain characters missing or backgrounds not being animated, but overall the Saturn did a bloody good job with these kind of games. It's a shame because this was the only one that come out in Europe of this series, of really any SNK fighter. Fatal Furies didn't, Samurai Spirits didn't, none of them come out on the Saturn other than this in Europe, and it didn't even get released in North America at all. So yeah, it's a pretty unique kind of game, and really it was only until I think maybe the PlayStation 2 generation that these kind of games started to pick up traction, in various compilations. I think Real Bout Fatal Fury did come out on the PlayStation in Europe. I think I worked at Game at the time, and I remember seeing one copy of it being traded in, and I think we asked a ridiculous price on it. Even then, that's how scarce it was. I think we asked nearly £40 on it, and it was a pre-owned game. But because it was so scarce, you know, that's how much we were asking for it. But yeah, really cool game. Really, really cool game. I do have the Japanese version. I think this was actually published by Sega. Yeah, so Magic Carpet. From what I know, this was a PC game, wasn't it? And it's one of these kind of early 3D PC games that got converted over and had a lot of kind of buzz about it. Was it Peter Molyneux game? I think it might have been, actually. Oh, so this is Mech Warrior. So this did come out. Is Mech Warrior or Armored Core? Oh, Gun Griffin. That's what it is, Gun Griffin. I knew I recognised it. I did have this. A number of years ago, I did have it. I don't remember it actually being too bad. I think like a lot of these games, they're a little bit overly complicated for their own good. You know, anyone who remembers the Steel Battalion on Xbox, you know, that is crazy. You know, sometimes they're a little bit you know, well, basically just overly complex, aren't they? But I don't think this is too bad. I thought this was actually quite good. From the screenshots, it actually looks quite nice, like the textures, and it looks like nice chunky polygons. Ultimate Mortal Kombat. So again, just kind of reiterating what was said with the, you know, the SNK fighters. This was really the generation that we've really seen kind of like for like arcade conversions, and when you were comparing these games to the 16-bit, you know, versions, it was night and day. Yeah, they had loading and various sound effects were kind of missing, but bloody hell, it was pretty much an arcade in the home. You know, and literally a few years after it had come out. I have got Mortal Kombat, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. Mortal Kombat 3 is not my favourite of the series. I do have a certain charm towards the first one, but as a balance, I think Mortal Kombat 2 is probably the pinnacle for me in terms of like the original 2D fighters of Mortal Kombat. I think when it went to Mortal Kombat 3, it just got a little bit too complicated with, you know, the kind of run aspects and the combos, and it just felt like it was kind of being forced on. It seemed kind of Killer Instinct, and it wanted, you know, a piece of that kind of those silly combos. And then obviously the fatalities turned into, you know, the babalities. I mean, they had them in Mortal Kombat 2, but it was too bloated, I think. But yeah, I do have Mortal Kombat 2 on the Saturn as well, and again, that is a very, very good conversion. And I think that is a Saturn exclusive, because I think Mortal Kombat 2 came out on the PlayStation in Japan. So this is just going over the kind of features. More Panzer Dragoon. So again, this is a massive game. You can see this has been kind of absolutely driven home in the last issue as well. But yeah, what a sterling game. I don't want to keep talking about it because I said it in the last video, but what it does with the Saturn and the unique kind of graphical features, if you really want to see what the Saturn can do without kind of like the pretense of playing PlayStation versions in it, play this game. Love this stage. Always remember this stage from the demo. The forest stage, this huge kind of mech robot, kind of massive monster ant. And it just, I remember playing the demo and it was kind of pretty awe-inspiring. Just seeing something of that scale. And the music as well. Absolutely brilliant game. So yeah, what's this, Darkstalkers? Kind of just, I think, a bit like what I said earlier about Space Hulk. This was one of these games where they had such massive sprites they really emphasised the sprite work massively on the stills or the screenshots like this. You'd look at this and you think, bloody hell, look at that. When realistically, when you're playing it, it's just one frame of animation. And it still does look good, but in a still, it looks far more impressive. But I will give its due. I mean, as a game, it's pretty much Street Fighter, just kind of with a different clothing on and a funky cast of characters. But so the gameplay's spot on. I don't necessarily find the characters as appealing as Street Fighter, but yeah, it plays well. Right, I mean, that's a bit of a picture to be having in a magazine. See if I can zoom in. Like some sort of corpse thing. So, Vampire Hunter tells us the best way to defeat evil undead is to whack them in the face with a blast of psychic energy. But sadly, this sort of resource that's not available to human beings. Yeah, it looks like some sort of corpse, half corpse alligator. But oh, you had young kids reading this. That would freak me out, mate. Some Wipeout tips. My own opinion of Wipeout is, I do like the game, but there's just a certain float that I'd get the cars, ships, whatever, they float, and you can really feel it, and the balance is, it's pretty good. But I don't know, there's certain frustrations that I found really almost ruin the game, and that the first is if you touch the wall, it just brings you to a stop. I'm not really a fan of the weapons in it. It's not like a Mario Kart kind of game, so I don't feel the weapons needed to be in it. But yeah, I mean, it's a game of its time, isn't it, really? And I think honestly speaking, it has actually aged quite well, to be fair. So there's just certainly certain annoyances with it. It was definitely the PlayStation kind of game, and it was amazing, really, because Sony owned Psygnosis at this point. Why they brought it on the Saturn and N64, actually, Wipeout 64. Win yourself a Wipeout t-shirt. So yeah, more PlayStation magazines. So Tekken 2. I had a lot of time for Tekken 2. Really enjoyed that. When I did finally move over to PlayStation, just bought another one to go with the Saturn, and they actually complemented each other quite well. But yeah, really enjoyed Tekken 2, unlocking all the characters, watching all the cheesy kind of videos at the end. Always was Kazuga. It's basically kind of the modern Tekken is pretty ridiculous, really. Like, in terms of story, and the characters are so out there now. It's kind of lost a lot of its charm for me. But still, we got Virtua Fighter 6 coming, keeping it grounded, I think. So yeah, Wipeout, 92%. So fast and absorbing, Wipeout lacks the pseudo-realism of Rally, but delivers heavily in the general fun stakes. Definitely worth checking out. Have they compared it to the PlayStation version then? So, however, compared to Rally, Wipeout's graphics are slightly on the grainy side. Blah blah blah. But the Saturn is capable better than we have seen. Not major gameplay fault, but Wipeout is still very fast. I don't think they've specifically compared it to PlayStation. But yeah, it's still a good conversion. Magic Carpet, 90%. Then the Daddy, Street Fighter Alpha, 93. Excellent game. Really, really excellent. Like I said, it's just basically like watching a manga. And it was so influenced by the Street Fighter animation, wasn't it? And Street Fighter 2, the animation by manga. A lot of the characters are clear design cues from that. But I'm sure most people have played it. Shell Shock, 70%. Can't say I'm too familiar with it really. Core design though. Another golf game. I think there was 2 golf games on the last issue. Valora Valley Golf. I'm not overly familiar with that one. Did that even come out? Shining Wisdom. So you've got Shining Falls, Shining the Holy Ark, and Shining Wisdom. All part of the same series on the Saturn, but they're all very, very different games. I think Shining the Holy Ark is a dungeon crawler. Shining Force 3 is more of a traditional role-playing game, and Shining Wisdom is a strategy role-playing game. They're all completely different. I think this is generally the cheapest game on the Saturn out of the 3. But I don't really do POW anymore, and it's been a long time. Checkpoint 2. So Time Attack Top 10. Dean Graham from Dundee. 3 minutes 6 seconds. 16. I do think that's quite a quick time, to be fair. Gex. 62%. I don't actually think Gex probably deserves something that low. I think this was a period in time where anything that had a sort of 16-bit vibe was very much frowned upon. I do actually quite like this game. I think it's quite a fun little 2D platformer. But I do think that there was certain kind of unconscious biases towards, older generation games, I guess you would say. Run-of-the-mill platform game with rather lame hero, very predictable gameplay. Fans of Johnny Bazooka Tone will probably love it. So I suppose that's actually a valid point. I think Johnny Bazooka Tone is probably quite a similar style game. This was a 3DO game originally, wasn't it? So it was already a couple of years old by the time it came to Saturn. So, Sega Rally, the Lakeside course. So telling you how to specifically get around it. Absolute bastard, that course. Virtua Fighter 2. Shun Di. Kind of drunken master, isn't he? Chappie, Sarah. Tips. So you've got Hang On GP 96, Virtua Fighter. Game of the Month, X-Men, Children of the Atom. Again, Capcom were kind of hitting it out of the park back then, weren't they? Again, it is very much kind of Street Fighter-esque in terms of how it plays and the feel of it. But this was kind of Street Fighter turned up to 11 with the, the specials and the kind of, the superheroes. They're going to be out there, ain't they? Mortal Kombat 2. How can Mortal Kombat 2 get 2 stars? I'm sorry, but I don't agree with that in the slightest. Again, this kind of bias towards older games, rather than maybe looking at it as almost like an arcade perfect conversion, it's always downplayed. It's last generation's game. So they said, oh dear, in fact, oh double dear, with cherry on top. A non-appearance of Mortal Kombat 2 on Saturn has been something of an enigma, but luckily all sold this appearance this month. So this is actually a proper review. I wouldn't say, it is clearly a proper review, but they haven't given it any kind of... Bear in mind, that's X-Men as well. maybe they're from like last month or something. So in a nutshell, they said, if there was a title that clicks on the current Mortal Kombat Backlash, this is it. More wheezing, fragile grandad, old duffer conversion. I don't think it's that bad. So gone are the fluid bouts of yesteryear, replaced by cantankerous jittery gameplay. For a start, the sound, surely the bone of CD game is absolutely appalling. The loading time borders on tragic. I don't think it does, to be honest. And the slowdown, they're saying, yeah, I'm not sure. I've played that a decent amount, Mortal Kombat 2 on Saturn, and I don't I think that's really quite harsh. Darius, 4 stars. Titan Wars. Hang on GP, or hang on GP, isn't it? Bit of a funky game. You have to play that with the steering wheel to get the most out of it, I think. CDs, films and music. Quickly Down Under. Oh man, I remember that film. That's Tom Selleck, isn't it? He's a cowboy that goes to like the Australian kind of Wild West to save the Aborigines. That's from what I remember. I haven't watched it in many years. Oh man, that is going to be tough. Destruction Derby review next month. Yeah. Buckle in, folks. Gex. So there you go. Sega Saturn Magazine. Issue 6. Bye bye.